Let's move on to main topic number 2, shall we? And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Kyle Arking. And Kyle Arking writes, do you remember when Kathleen Kennedy said about a year ago that Lucasfilm had future plans for Rey, Finn, and Poe? That was longer than a year ago, just so you know. But yes, I do remember that very clearly. They are some of my favorite characters, and I would like to see them again. I enjoyed the Disney investors meeting, but found it kind of odd that none of these characters were mentioned. Do you think that Lucasfilm had decided to move on from these characters, or maybe just not focus on them right now, and instead focus on new characters? Okay, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yes, listen, there were a couple of key things that in this big Disney announcement event that we had the other day that was fantastic. There were a few things notable by their absence that weren't really being discussed, right? One of them was really no discussion about Spider-Man 3. So that was one thing that had a lot of people scratching their heads, but that made sense because it's really more of a Sony thing. Another part of that was missing, though, was, hey, what about this Rian Johnson trilogy you guys keep saying is happening? But we've been telling you guys for ages that ain't going to happen. That Rian Johnson trilogy is not going to happen. But the other one is, there was a point in time a while ago, quite a while ago, that Kathleen Kennedy did indeed talk about the fact that they have future plans for all three of those characters, Rey, Poe, and Finn. However, that was really the last time there was any sort of discussion about that. There really hadn't been any sort of discussion about these characters being used again since that time. Now, as the sequel trilogy progressed, and Rob, you know how I feel about the sequel trilogy. I love the Force Awakens. Love it. I like The Last Jedi with some caveats. There's some things about it I certainly complain about. And I really didn't like the Rise of Skywalker. Did not like that thing at all. But underlying all of that, even though there's a part of the sequel trilogy that I absolutely adore and love, the reality is, at the end of the day, that was a trilogy that had no plan, had no roadmap, and they were just winging it from film to film. And you can get lucky winging it for a while, but eventually it'll always catch up to you. It eventually, just pure winging it without a plan, will catch up to you. And I think Lucasfilm learned a lesson, Rob. You know, we talked about this before. They put out that, what was it called? The High Republic era stuff coming. And they put out that promo video that showed they gathered all these excellent writers to get together on this big retreat, to have this big writer's room, to really sit down and map out what this High Republic is. I think that was Lucasfilm's way of telling us, yeah, we blew it with the sequel trilogy and not coming up with a plan. And we are kind of showing you guys right now that we're not going to make that mistake again. We have a plan now. We're going to plan out everything out. And I think realizing that, and then seeing the reception for the films decrease more and more as the trilogy progressed. And then you started hearing that, you know, who's Moon Knight again? Why am I forgetting? Poe. Who's Poe? Why am I freezing on his name? I'm freezing on the actor's name who's going to be playing Moon Knight.
You're doing it to me. You're ensorceling me.
Why am I suddenly freezing on his name? The guy's playing Moon Knight.
Oscar Isaac, dude.
Oscar Isaac. Thank you. Why did I suddenly freeze on Oscar Isaac? Anyway, you know, we heard Oscar Isaac, you know, a while ago doing an interview and saying, you know, that last film was probably his last hurrah. We know that John Boyega isn't really interested in doing Star Wars anymore. I think Daisy Ridley is ready to move on. And I think Lucasfilm was ready to move on from them. Like, Rob, one of the reasons I said before that I don't think we're going to get the Rian Johnson trilogy, and I said this ages ago, but was the fact that what is the point in doing a Rian Johnson trilogy right now? I think Rian Johnson's a tremendous filmmaker. I do. Just go watch Knives Out. But the reality is, by doing a trilogy of Rian Johnson films, you're just inviting more chaos amongst the fandom. You're just inviting more divisiveness amongst the fandom when you don't need it. It's asking for headaches you don't need to have. And I think they realize that same thing when it comes to these characters that started out so strong, in my opinion, but then they, because they had no plan, kind of lost their way. Compounding all of this, we get to the Disney announcement and they make no mention of them. Now, this is the worst kept secret, but I was told recently, Rob, that it was probably back in around March that so we're talking months ago. I was recently told that as long ago as March, they had pretty much decided that they were moving on from those characters and that they were going to do other things moving forward. So I believe, Rob, we'll still see, I think, stories maybe set in this time frame and a little bit moving forward post the First Order. I believe we'll still see other stories told, but I believe stories with these specific characters, they've run their course, they're done, they're moving on to other things, they're building buzz and excitement about other areas of the Star Wars universe. The era of Poe, Rey, and Finn is officially done. Rob, you saw the fact that they didn't make any mention of this. What's your thoughts on this whole situation?
It doesn't surprise me. I feel that while I don't want to diminish anyone's like of those characters, I feel that they just never took hold in the pop culture zeitgeist the way the original trilogy characters did, or even the prequel trilogy characters, which were sort of adjuncts to the original series, the original trilogy. To be honest, I don't see a reason why we need to follow those characters again. They just didn't grab the world the way that the previous characters did. And yet I understand that for some people, Poe and Finn and Rey are their first experience with Star Wars on the big screen. So they are going to mean a lot to a lot of people. But by the end of Rise of Skywalker, it's like, okay, certainly no one talks about them the way they talk about Grogu.
Baby Yoda. Yeah, again, it's no surprise. And look, again, this is why, Rob, when we talk about this, I am a big fan of Kathleen Kennedy as a producer. She is maybe the best that's ever done it in the history of Hollywood. Steven Spielberg says she's the most gifted producer Hollywood's ever seen. But there is a difference. Just because you're great at one job does not mean you're great at everything else. Just because you're a great singer doesn't mean you make a great electrician. And just because you're a great producer doesn't mean you're necessarily a great studio head. And I, for one, was very happy and excited when I heard that George Lucas had picked her to run Lucasfilm. I thought it was a great show. On paper, it was a great hire. But as time progressed and we saw all the fallout between her and the directors, that's the part I've been complaining about most for the last couple of years, is the fact that she can't get on the same page with her directors. And then as it became more and more apparent that there was absolutely no roadmap and no plan for this current iteration of Star Wars and the recent trilogy and these characters, you got off to a great start. Fantastic. But starting great doesn't win you the game, and ending strong is what wins you the game. And they couldn't do it because they had no plan. And it just speaks to me more and more about the fact that somebody else needs to step in and take over Lucasfilm. Thank Kathy Kennedy for what she's done. Hey, thank Kathy Kennedy that she seems to have learned some lessons, and now she's got them on this new road ahead with Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano, The Acolyte, Rogue Squadron. All these things look and sound great. Fabulous. Thank you for setting that up. But now it's time for somebody else to come in and take us the rest of the way. And I think the fate of these three characters, Rob, is just kind of puts an exclamation point on that about how they kind of dropped the ball there. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this whole thing about Star Wars now moving on from these characters? They're still going to move forward. We got lots of Star Wars coming, 10 series minimum coming. But what do you think of them moving on from these characters? It's too bad. It was off to a great start, but it finishes really weak. What do you guys think? Jump into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.